I was saying, Joy Taylor, every dog has its day. And since I'm a big dog, I've got 2 days.
Okay.
So now.
You just called yourself a dog?
Yeah, I'm a dog. Yeah, I'm a big dog, a big one.
Kevin Durant is 6'11", who can pull up from 40. Okay. This brother is on that level. I'm talking about offensively.
Do you think you're better than Jarrell Revis is right now?
I'm better than you.
Welcome to episode 51 of the Lowdown Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Brown, as always, and this is an NBA episode because we got the NBA All-Star Weekend kicking off tonight with the Celebrity All-Star Game, and a quick update about that. So Devin Booker will be replacing Damian Lillard due to injury. This is Devin Booker's first NBA All-Star appearance in his 5th season, so congrats to Devin Booker. This is actually his first appearance since Steve Nash as a Phoenix Sun, and also I have a special guest on this show. So this guy is an NBA writer and reporter for SBNation. His name is Michael Pina. He breaks everything you need to know about the NBA All-Star Game. And we also break down the NBA trade deadline, and we also just basically dive into that first, talking about like his thoughts and opinions about all these trades that happened in the past few weeks. And then we transition from that into the NBA All-Star Weekend preview. So check out this episode. It's a lot of fun. Michael is definitely an expert when it comes to NBA and college basketball. He's definitely a basketball expert. So just definitely check out this episode. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
And we're live in the phone lines, ladies and gentlemen. Another special guest on the show. Welcome to the Lowdown. This is Mark Brown, your host as always. And I have an NBA writer and reporter for SBNation. His name is Michael Pina. He's also a co-host of Sports Illustrated's Open Floor podcast. And he also has another one. He's a co-host of the Winning Plays podcast. So he has a lot of content out there, like where it comes to writing, podcasting, radio, you name it. And Michael Pina is the source. So, Michael, I just wanted to say welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. What an introduction.
Oh yeah, I had to throw it out there, man, because it's true. It's true. I mean, this has no lies whatsoever. So starting off, I noticed like there's been a lot of noise going on in the NBA. We went from the Kobe's tragic death, along with the 8 others in that helicopter accident a couple weeks back, and we go from that to you had the trade deadline. So the trade deadline, we'll knock that out right away, and then after that, we can just talk about the 2020 All-Star Game coming up this Friday, as a matter of fact, because the Celebrity All-Star Game is coming up on Valentine's Day. So that's pretty funny. How ironic. But either way, starting off with the trade deadline. So far, what are your biggest takeaways coming out of that?
I mean, there were no big transactions at the top besides Marcus Morris going to the Los Angeles Clippers. So if you just start with trades that I think could have impacted the championship picture, you had the Milwaukee Bucks did pat, adding Marvin Williams in a buyout situation, it looks like, but nothing major. The Lakers have stood pat, the Celtics, the Raptors. So I think that just from that perspective, it wasn't as noisy as I think a lot of the coverage has indicated. Now, the Houston Rockets obviously reshuffled things a little bit in a dramatic way by dealing Clint Capella to the Atlanta Hawks and receiving Robert Covington from the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they will be small permanently. And I personally am a little optimistic that can work, but we will see. But besides that, yeah, those are kind of like the big takeaways for me from the deadline. You obviously have D'Angelo Russell going from the Golden State Warriors to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and we'll see how that works out with him and Karl-Anthony Towns as a duo going forward. But I thought that, there were some teams that could have made more impactful moves, like the Philadelphia 76ers, to name one, that didn't. And I guess we'll see kind of how everything shapes out over the next couple months.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, what I didn't understand is, I noticed there were some fans here and there, especially for the Rockets side of things, saying that Robert Covington is, they're calling him they were calling him young like he was a rookie. This guy is nearly 30 years old. He just turned 29 like a couple months ago. And he's actually older than Clint Capella, but like you said, I mean, you could actually see something. I mean, maybe we'll see something coming out of that because they got rid of Gerald Green and also Nene, and then they also got like a first round pick coming in exchange. So we'll see how that goes. And then another thing I wanted to bring up was the Detroit Pistons. Like the fact that they traded Andre Drummond to the Cavaliers didn't make any sense to me. Like because he reportedly said that he had no clue it was coming, and he was really upset about that because he was talking about how loyal he's been to Detroit. And to see him just to get traded out of the blue just didn't really make sense. So especially a lot of Pistons fans. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it wasn't a total shock just because the Pistons are trying to rebuild. I don't think that that's a surprise given the state of their cap situation and Blake Griffin's health going forward. They're in a bit of a pickle, so it's not the biggest surprise to me that they would want to get off Andre Drummond's salary for next season, and he has I believe, $28 million player option. So they, as we saw with the return, that's all they really cared about was getting off that salary and hoping that he wouldn't pick it up. So, I mean, from a basketball perspective, I'm not really sure, to be honest, what the Cavaliers are doing. I'm more interested in that situation than with Detroit, just because they have Kevin Love. They have, I guess, Tristan Thompson is someone they're going to let go in free agency, I would presume. And a Kevin Love, Andre Drummond front court, I don't see it defensively. And I think that team needs to be going in the direction that Detroit is going, which is, they are bad, but I want them to be even worse for the next couple of years, I think, should be the priority. So it's going to be interesting. A lot of people have been talking about how the Drummond trade, what that means for the state of the big man. I think it's a little more complicated than that. I think that Andre Drummond in particular is just, he's not a winning basketball player in a lot of ways. And at that salary, you saw Detroit kind of come to that realization. So it was kind of he's a big name, but just from the perspective of, winning and losing, I don't think that was such a humongous transaction.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And then another thing I wanted to bring up is, reverting back to the Rockets, ever since that trade, because their first game without Clint Capella was against the Lakers, which was just a few days back, and then they actually happened to win that game by 10 points. But since then, they've lost two games. They lost two straight. They lost to the Suns and to the Jazz by a buzzer beater by Bogdan Bogdanovic at the very, very end. And that was a crazy thriller matchup right there. I mean, everybody thought P.J. Tucker had sealed the deal with 1.6 seconds left on the clock. When he shot that three, that was a nice pass by Westbrook, by the way. And then they had 1.6 seconds. They were inbounding, and Bogdanovic happened to get open for a second, and then both P.J. Tucker and James Harden happened to contest that shot, but they just were deemed to be unlucky because Bogdan Bogdanovic was able to drain that three. It was a long-range three, similar to what Damian Lillard's been doing for so long now, for several games straight. And just to see that happen to them, you already know there's a reason, Russell Westbrook decided to rejoin James Harden with the hopes of trying to go a little bit further, because both these guys still have yet to win a ring, and then they didn't get a chance to do it in Oklahoma City, and they're going to try to do it in Houston. But in my opinion, I don't think that's happening. I don't see that happening this year for sure. Maybe with these trades, maybe the next couple of years or so. But even then, it'll still be a tough deal to break right there. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm a little more optimistic on Houston's situation than a lot of people. I mean, I see the downside defensively with, not playing a traditional big or even anyone who stands taller than 6'9" or 6'8" at any time is obviously a risk. You're going to get bullied on the glass. You're not going to have any rim protection. And in the playoffs against teams, if you want to win the title, you have to go against the Clippers, against the Lakers. You may have to, in the championship round, go against Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. So rim protection is very important. But I don't think anyone can defend this team in a 7-game series. In that Utah Jazz game you referred to, Quinn Snyder put Rudy Gobert on Russell Westbrook, which I thought was really fascinating. And, I mean, Westbrook, there were a lot of pull-up twos that he missed in that game, and he does not shoot threes anymore. But he was still able to get into the paint, make things happen. The kick out to P.J. Tucker in the corner that you mentioned was also a very advantageous play for him, and he's able to just kind of leverage his speed. So I don't think you can defend these guys. I think they'll be able to space the floor really well. They have a lot of shooting. James Harden is still the best scorer in the league. Westbrook has been playing terrific. So it's just going to be really fascinating, and I think they'll be a victim or a successor of the matchups that they see in the playoffs. And I don't know how far they'll get, but it'll be fun to see a team do something so drastically different from everybody else.
And, and when you brought up Rudy Gobert guarding Russell Westbrook, that makes sense because Rudy Gobert won Defensive Player of the Year, I think, twice. So that was like that best bet because Russell Westbrook is like arguably the most elusive or explosive player in the league. So to see him, just like he fears nobody. He'll try to post up anybody. He'll drive in the lane, attack the basket against guys that are 6'11", 7 feet tall. He'll do it all the time. And reverting back to these trades, I noticed like I saw those reports according to Adrian Woj, like from ESPN, about the Memphis Grizzlies and the Miami Heat agreeing on like a 6-player trade. So do you have any updates on that or anything important you had to say about that deal between the Heat and the Grizzlies?
Yeah, I wrote a piece about that one for SBNation, and my opinion on it was basically that I thought the Miami Heat should have done more. Getting Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder for Justice Winslow and salary is really great, and it'll make them a better, more balanced team. Their defense has slipped to 14th in the league over the past few weeks, and that was obviously a cause of concern for Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. So hopefully they shored that up. But offensively, I think in the playoffs, when you only have Jimmy Butler's really the only guy on that team who can consistently create his own shot. And I thought that trading for Danilo Gallinari would have been really, really, really beneficial to just the diversification of their offense and all the different ways that they could be able to score in the playoffs. And I thought Gallo would have elevated them to, a state where I think they could have beaten the Milwaukee Bucks in a playoff series. They could have beaten the Celtics and the Raptors. And now I think they're still very competitive, and no one will want to play them because of just the style that they deploy every night and how hard they play and how disciplined they are, how much they move. And it's just a pain to go up against that team. But in terms of talent, I don't see them coming out of the East because they just didn't add that offensive punch that they needed.
Yeah, and you're right, because about Danilo Gallinari, because like right now he's still currently in Oklahoma City, and then see that's another thing that brought some question because me personally I enjoy it. Like I'm an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, that's my favorite team, and I've noticed that after Presti, that huge rebuilding process they started back during the summertime after getting rid of Paul George, Russell Westbrook. I mean, you name it, pretty much anybody you can think of that came out of there. Oh, Jermani Grant as well going to the Nuggets. I mean, there was so many trades that happened with Oklahoma City during the summer. And to see Sam Presti do that in exchange of like 14 to 15 guaranteed first-round picks the next 5 to 6 seasons is incredible. And to see how Oklahoma City's been performing this year is really, really brought a lot of people's attention because nobody really expected Oklahoma City to even be in playoff contention right now. And the fact that they're only like one game behind. So it's really, I know it's really close when you look at the NBA standings. It's really close between the Rockets, the Thunder, and the Mavericks. Like as of now, they've been playing hot potato for taking the 5th, 6th, or 7th, or the 6th, 7th, and 8th seed pretty much, or the 5th, 6th, and 7th. Like I don't have it on top of my head, but it's pretty close between all three of those guys. Mm-hmm. And another thing I wanted to bring up is, I mean, I kind of see why Sam Presti decided not to get rid of Danilo Gallinari because they pretty much already had sealed their deal during the summertime. I mean, they have plenty of cap space, several first, like basically an endless amount of first-round picks coming in these next few seasons. So. What are your thoughts on Sam Presti on keeping Danilo Gallinari on the Thunder?
Yeah, I like it from their perspective. I mean, I believe he's only 30 years old. He's been able to stay healthy over the past couple of years, going back to his borderline all-star campaign with the Los Angeles Clippers last season. He's got a skill set that makes life easier for everybody else. He's a stretch four, really good outside shooter, creates those driving lanes for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Dennis Schroeder and CP. So he's really good there. They've been, as you said, one of the bright Cinderella stories of the entire season. Not a lot of people expected them to be as good as they've been. They're going to make the playoffs, and no one is going to want to play them in the playoffs. They have, Steven Adams. They have a lot of continuity and chemistry with a lot of the other guys off the bench. They don't have a lot of wing depth, which is a problem, but when they go small, they're really difficult to guard, and CP and Shea are really good defenders for their position. So I liked it. It's going to be really interesting to see if they re-sign Gallinari and at what price point this summer because he's a free agent. But if they keep him and they just kind of want to roll through with CP again and try to stay as competitive as possible, I think that's fun. And I think that teams that try to win in certain circumstances, that's what you want to see.
Exactly. And then just to see them just like you said, there's a lot of continuity involved in it. Just to see how they've been playing, like it's like